The most feared pirates in history weren't afraid of storms, they hunted them. While merchant ships fled in terror from tornado-spawning weather, these sea criminals deliberately sailed straight into the chaos. Their survival rate was impossibly high, but the method they used defies everything you think you know about sailing. Between 1650 and 1750, Caribbean waters unleashed over 990 recorded storms on unsuspecting ships. That's roughly 10 storms every single year for a century. Pirates weren't just dodging the Royal Navy, they were fighting Mother Nature herself, and she packed a much deadlier punch than any cannon. Most people think pirates feared other ships or getting caught. Wrong. Ask any seasoned buccaneer what kept him awake at night, and he'd point to the sky. Storms killed more pirates than all the naval battles combined. The ocean didn't care about your reputation or how many ships you'd plundered. When tornadoes formed over water, pirates called them water spouts. These weren't cute little whirlpools you see in movies. We're talking about massive spinning columns of destruction that could appear with less than 5 minutes warning. 5 minutes. That's barely enough time to panic, let alone prepare your entire ship for what's coming. The speed was terrifying. One moment you're sailing under clear skies, counting your stolen gold. The next moment, complete darkness swallows your world. Wind screams like 1,000 banshees. Waves taller than buildings slam into your hull from every direction. Your sturdy pirate ship suddenly feels like a child's toy in a bathtub. Then there's the weird part about pirate psychology. These were men who'd charge into sword fights without blinking. They'd attack ships twice their size for a bag of coins, but mention an approaching storm, even the toughest captain would go pale. Blackbeard himself once wrote in his journal that he'd rather face 10 warships than one angry hurricane. The darkness during these storms wasn't just scary, it was tactical suicide. Pirates relied on seeing wind patterns, wave directions, and nearby hazards. When visibility dropped to zero, navigation became pure guesswork. Crew members literally couldn't see their own hands in front of their faces. Communication meant screaming over winds that could drown out a cannon blast. Most fascinating is how storms changed pirate behavior completely. These lawless rebels who ignored every rule suddenly became obsessively organized. They developed detailed storm protocols, backup plans, and emergency procedures that would make modern sailors jealous. Survival required discipline, something most people don't associate with pirates. But here's what's really interesting about those old sea dogs. They didn't just survive these storms by luck or by praying to whatever gods they hadn't already offended. They developed specific techniques for spotting trouble before it hit. The smart ones learned to read nature's warning signs like a treasure map, and those early detection methods could mean the difference between living to steal another day or becoming shark food. Pirates weren't exactly meteorologists, but they sure knew how to read the sky. Their lives depended on spotting trouble before it spotted them. And when you're dealing with waterspouts that could appear faster than you could say pieces of 8, every second counted. The smart crews always had someone watching the horizon. Dark, spinning clouds were the obvious giveaway, but experienced pirates looked for subtler signs first. Wind shifts happened suddenly. One moment you'd feel a steady breeze from the east, then boom, it's swirling from 3 directions at once. That's when the old-timers would start barking orders. Temperature drops were another dead giveaway. Pirates might not have had fancy instruments, but they could feel when the air suddenly turned cold against their sun-baked skin. Some crews carried crude barometers, basically glass tubes filled with water that would bubble and change when air pressure dropped. Primitive? Sure, but it worked. Then there's the animal warning system pirates swore by. Birds would vanish completely before major storms hit. Makes sense, right? If creatures that live in the sky are heading for cover, maybe you should too. Pirates had sayings about this. When the gulls flee, so should we. And if birds disappear, get ready. These weren't just cute rhymes. They were survival wisdom passed down through generations of sailors. The weird part is how fast everything could change. Pirates described going from calm seas to complete chaos in under 5 minutes. One crew member would spot strange cloud formations. Another would notice the sudden stillness, and within moments, they'd be racing. Ships that survived multiple storms weren't just lucky. They had crews that could read nature's warning signs like a book. The captain might get the glory, but it was often some weathered sailor who'd spent years watching skies who saved everyone's necks. Being alert gave crews those precious extra minutes they desperately needed. The difference between spotting a waterspout formation 5 minutes early versus 2 minutes early. That could mean the difference between riding out the storm and becoming fish food. Well, spotting the storm was just the first step. Once those dark clouds started spinning and the wind began its deadly dance, pirates had to move fast. Every rope, every sail, every piece of loose cargo became either a tool for survival or a weapon that could destroy them. The real test wasn't seeing trouble coming, it was getting ready for the fight of their lives. Once pirates spotted a tornado brewing, they had maybe 10 minutes before all hell broke loose. That's when the real work began, turning their ship into a floating fortress that could take whatever nature threw at it. First thing they did, rig extra preventer stays. These weren't your regular ropes. Think of them as the ship's emergency backup system. Thick, strong cables that wrapped around the masts like a corset. The regular rigging might snap under tornado winds, but these preventer stays were built to hold when everything else failed. Pirates knew their masts were their lifeline, and a broken mast in a storm meant death. But the masts weren't the only weak spots. Smart crews went around with wooden beams, bracing anything that looked like it might give way. Railings got extra support. Cabin doors were reinforced. The ship's structure had to become one solid piece, not a collection of parts that could break apart. Then came the sea anchor, probably the cleverest piece of storm gear pirates used. This wasn't like a normal anchor that digs into the ocean floor. A sea anchor was basically a huge underwater parachute that got dragged behind the ship. Why drag extra weight during a storm? Because it slowed the ship down and kept it steady. Without it, tornado winds could spin a ship around like a toy, and spinning meant capsizing. While some crew worked on anchors, others sealed every opening they could find. Hatches got battened down tight. Cargo was lashed to the deck with extra rope. Loose cannons sliding around could punch holes right through the hull. Water was going to get in no matter what, but pirates tried to control where and how much. Let's not forget the hand pumps. These weren't fancy machines, just simple devices that could move water fast when operated by strong arms. Before the storm hit, every pump got tested. Clogged pumps meant a flooded ship, and flooded ships don't float very long. The weird part is how organized this chaos was. Everyone knew their job without being told. Some guys handled ropes, others worked on structural bracing, and a few focused entirely on waterproofing. No time for arguments or confusion. The tornado wasn't going to wait for them to figure things out. All this preparation had to happen while the ship was already getting tossed around by pre-storm winds. Imagine trying to tie knots while standing on a bucking horse, but having the ship properly reinforced was only half the battle. The other half depended on how well the crew could work together once that tornado actually hit. When tornadoes struck pirate ships, survival wasn't about individual heroics or swashbuckling adventures. It was about teamwork that would make modern military units jealous. Pirates developed a rotation system that kept crews fresh during storms lasting hours or even days. No sailor worked more than 4 hours straight. Why? Because exhausted men made deadly mistakes. Historical records show that well-organized pirate crews had 60% better survival rates during severe weather compared to merchant vessels with poorly managed teams. That's not luck. That's smart planning. Every pirate knew their storm roll before the first raindrop fell. The helmsman stayed glued to the wheel, fighting to keep the ship pointed into waves. Lookouts perched wherever they could see through the chaos, shouting warnings about incoming swells or debris. Deck crews worked like machines, adjusting ropes and clearing water. Makes sense, right? When you've got maybe 30 minutes before your ship becomes driftwood, there's no time for confusion. But here's where pirate logic gets interesting. They rarely tied men to the ship during storms, unlike many naval vessels of the era. Pirates figured a man overboard was better than a dead man dragged down with a sinking ship. Cold calculation, but it worked. The weird part is how pirates handled crew injuries mid-storm. When someone got hurt or swept away, the remaining men didn't panic or try impossible rescues. They instantly redistributed duties. The cook might end up working rigging. The navigator could find himself manning pumps. This wasn't heartless. It was survival mathematics. Pirates also used a buddy system that modern safety experts would recognize. Each man watched his partner's back, checking that safety lines held and gear stayed secure. During the worst moments, when waves crashed over the deck and visibility dropped to zero, these partnerships kept crews alive. Then there's the communication system. Pirates developed hand signals and rope tugs for when shouting became useless against howling winds. Simple gestures meant secure that line, or man overboard, or get below deck now. These weren't fancy military codes, just practical solutions born from necessity. Leadership during storms revealed the best and worst in pirate captains. Smart captains stayed visible, moving through the ship and checking on their men. They knew that seeing their leader in action kept morale up when everything seemed hopeless. Cowardly captains who hid below deck often found themselves facing mutiny after the storm passed. What separated successful pirate crews from those that ended up as shark food wasn't superior seamanship alone. It was their ability to function as a single organism when nature unleashed its fury. But even perfect teamwork meant nothing without proper sail handling, which could make or break everything in seconds. When a tornado hit, pirates had about 3 seconds to make a decision that could save or doom their entire crew. Drop the sails or watch their ship get shredded like paper. Most captains chose to live. The biggest mistake? Leaving too much canvas up when the wind started screaming. Pirates learned this the hard way after watching countless ships get their masts snapped like twigs. A fully rigged vessel catching tornado winds was basically asking for a death sentence. The smart crews moved fast, hauling down every sail they could reach before the real chaos began. But here's where it gets interesting. They didn't just drop everything and pray. Pirates kept one tiny sail called a storm jib flying at the front of the ship. This little piece of cloth was their steering wheel in hell. Without it, the ship would spin like a drunk sailor, completely out of control. The storm jib gave them just enough bite against the wind to keep the bow pointed where they needed it. Then there's the bundling technique that separated the living from the dead. Loose sails and rigging became deadly whips in tornado winds, capable of knocking a man overboard or straight into the next world. Pirates tied everything down tight, wrapping canvas and rope into neat bundles that couldn't flail around. Every loose line was a potential killer. Sometimes the situation got so bad that crews stripped the ship completely naked. No sails at all. This move, called lying a hull, meant letting the vessel drift bow first into the massive waves. Sounds terrifying, right? Well, it was better than having your mainmast crash through the deck and sink the whole operation. The timing had to be perfect. Wait too long to drop sail, and the wind would do it for you. Usually by destroying your masts in the process. Move too early, and you'd lose precious control just when you needed it most. Experienced pirates could feel the exact moment when the wind shifted from manageable to murderous. What's crazy is how fast this all happened. From the first warning signs to full sail management, crews had maybe 10 minutes if they were lucky. Most operations took 15 minutes on a calm day. The pressure was incredible. Speed wasn't just helpful, it was everything. A crew that could strip their rigging in under 8 minutes had survival odds that jumped dramatically. Those extra few minutes meant the difference between riding out the storm and becoming another ghost ship legend. But smart sail work was only half the battle. Once those sails were down, pirates faced an even bigger challenge, actually steering their ship through the nightmare that was coming next. Dropping those sails was just the beginning. Now came the really terrifying part, actually steering through a tornado at sea. The helmsman had one golden rule that separated living pirates from dead ones. Never let the waves hit your ship sideways. When a waterspout was tearing across the ocean, the smart move was pointing your bow straight into those massive waves. This technique, called heaving to, kept the ship from rolling over like a barrel. But here's the crazy part. Pirates had to steer completely blind. Zero visibility. The wind screamed so loud that shouting orders was pointless. Rain hit like bullets. Lightning turned the world into a flickering nightmare for split seconds before plunging everything back into total darkness. How did they know which way to turn the wheel? They felt it. Experienced helmsmen could sense the rhythm of waves through their feet and hands. The ship would lift, pause, then crash down. That pattern told them everything about wave direction and size. Makes sense, right? When you can't see, your other senses get sharper fast. Then there's the weird physics of pirate ships during storms. These vessels were small and shallow compared to massive merchant ships. That made them incredibly nimble. They could pivot and respond quickly to changing conditions. But it also made them more vulnerable. Every wave could potentially flip them over. The helmsman rarely worked alone during waterspouts. 2 or 3 pirates would grab the wheel together because the force of water hitting the rudder could snap a man's arms. They'd brace their legs against anything solid and fight the wheel like their lives depended on it, which they did. Smart captains positioned their strongest crew members at the helm during storms. Not necessarily the biggest guys. Strength mattered, but experience mattered more. A veteran sailor who'd survived 5 waterspouts was worth 10 muscle-bound rookies who'd panic when the ship started spinning. Let's not forget that these pirates were essentially surfing house-sized waves while a tornado tried to pick up their entire ship. The boat would climb up one side of a wave, hang in the air for a terrifying moment, then crash down the other side. During that brief pause at the top, experienced helmsmen would quickly adjust their heading before the next wave hit. The most dangerous moment? When the wind suddenly stopped. That meant they were entering the eye of the storm. Pirates knew this calm wouldn't last long, and they had maybe minutes to make repairs or adjust their position before the back half of the tornado slammed into them from the opposite direction. Even the best steering couldn't prevent damage completely, though. The storm passes, but the real work begins now. Pirates couldn't just celebrate surviving a tornado. Their ship was probably a floating disaster. Holes punched through the hull, rigging tangled like spaghetti, and seawater sloshing around everywhere. Time to patch up or sink. First priority, stop the bleeding. Pirates stuffed anything they could find into hull breaches. Tar-soaked cloth, wooden planks, even spare clothing if things got desperate. They'd hammer thin wooden patches over the worst holes, then smear hot tar around the edges like maritime duct tape. The smell was awful, but it worked. Then there's the deck inspection. Every single plank got checked for cracks or loose boards. Water pooling anywhere meant trouble. It could rot the wood or worse, reach the gunpowder stores below. Speaking of gunpowder, that stuff was absolutely useless when wet. Pirates had to dump soggy powder overboard and break out their emergency supplies fast. No gunpowder meant no cannons, and defenseless pirates were dead pirates. But here's the tricky part. Where do you make these repairs? Pirates couldn't exactly sail into a friendly port and ask for help. Instead, they'd sneak to remote islands or shallow coves where they could work undetected. These hidden repair spots became legendary among pirate crews, passed down like family recipes. The weird part is how creative pirates got with materials. Broken masts. They'd lash together spare lumber and canvas to create makeshift replacements. Torn sails, old hammocks, and spare cloth became patchwork repairs that somehow held together. One famous pirate captain reportedly fixed his rudder using a dining table and leather belts. Weather made everything harder. Try hammering nails while your ship rocks back and forth, or spreading hot tar when spray keeps hitting your work. Pirates developed tricks like working in shifts. Some crew members would shield the repair work while others did the actual fixing. Sometimes the damage was just too much. Pirates had to make brutal decisions about abandoning ships that couldn't be saved. Imagine surviving a tornado only to watch your vessel fall apart piece by piece anyway. Those were the moments that separated experienced crews from the rookies, knowing when to fight for your ship and when to cut your losses. Smart captains kept detailed mental notes about what broke and why. Each storm taught them something new about reinforcing weak spots or preparing better next time. Makes sense, right? You don't survive multiple tornadoes by making the same mistakes twice. Of course, getting your ship battle-ready again was only half the challenge. The real test came from what these storms taught pirates about something far more valuable than ship repairs: the unbreakable bonds forged between crew members when death comes calling. What separated pirates who lived to tell their tornado tales from those who became shark food? The answer might surprise you. It wasn't luck, divine intervention, or even superior ships. Historical records paint a crystal clear picture. Survival came down to preparation, skill, and learning from every near-death experience. Dig into the surviving ship logs and diaries from the golden age of piracy, and you'll find something remarkable. Veteran pirates who sailed Caribbean waters for decades often weathered 10, 15, even 20 major storms during their careers. Captain Bartholomew Roberts' crew documented surviving 13 violent tempests in just 4 years. That's not coincidence. That's expertise built through blood, sweat, and probably a few prayers. But here's where it gets interesting. Pirates valued seamanship over sword fighting when recruiting new crew members. A man who could read weather signs, tie proper knots under pressure, or patch a hull in rolling seas was worth his weight in stolen gold. Brute strength meant nothing when facing nature's fury, but knowing how to secure rigging and howling winds, that kept everyone breathing. The really smart pirate captains treated every storm as a classroom. After each battering, they'd gather the crew and analyze what worked, what failed, and what nearly killed them. These informal lessons became oral tradition, passed down from weathered veterans to wide-eyed newcomers. Knowledge accumulated like barnacles on a hull, slowly but permanently. Then there's the matter of attitude. Pirates didn't waste time cursing their bad luck when storms hit. They got to work, fast. Historical accounts describe crews moving with choreographed precision during emergencies, each man knowing his exact role without hesitation. This wasn't natural talent, it was drilled in muscle memory from countless practice sessions. Maritime historians studying wreck patterns discovered something fascinating. Pirate ships had better storm survival rates than many merchant vessels of the same era. Why? Merchant captains often sailed predictable routes on tight schedules, ignoring weather warnings. Pirates, meanwhile, had the luxury of changing course at the first sign of trouble. Freedom from rigid schedules literally saved their lives. The most successful pirate crews also maintained their equipment religiously. Well, as religiously as pirates could manage anything. Ropes, sails, pumps, and anchors received constant attention because everyone understood a simple truth. When the sea turns violent, there's no time for repairs. These storm-hardened seafarers developed an almost supernatural ability to work together under impossible conditions. Their survival depended on trust, communication, and shared expertise, qualities that served them well beyond weather emergencies. Their legacy teaches us something valuable about facing overwhelming challenges. Preparation beats prayers, teamwork trumps individual heroics, and experience earned through hardship becomes wisdom that no treasure chest could ever contain.